Game theory, how to win the game of life. Game theory is the study of decision-making under conditions of uncertainty over time. Are you the type of person who analyzes every second of an interaction for hours, replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you made the right move? If so, you're already playing a game, whether you realize it or not. Life is full of decisions, and each choice you make isn't made in isolation. It's an invisible battlefield of strategy, competition, and cooperation. This is where game theory comes in, the mathematical study of decision-making in competitive and social situations. Game theory has since extended its reach into fields as diverse as psychology, political science, biology, and even philosophy. It is the science of strategic interaction, where the choices of one player are influenced by and in turn influence the choices of others. What exactly is a game? The formal structure of strategic interaction. At first glance, defining a game might seem unnecessary. We intuitively understand what games are: chess, poker, football, video games. But in game theory, the definition of a game is far broader than what we typically imagine. A game, in game theory, refers to any interaction between multiple people where each person's payoff is affected by the decisions of others. Let's apply this definition to a few examples. Is Sudoku a game? In the traditional sense, sure, but in game theory, no. Sudoku is not a game. That's because your decisions while solving the puzzle don't affect any other player. There is, after all, only one player in the game, you. Now what about tic-tac-toe? That is a game. Two players compete, and each move affects the other player. Winning requires both players to respond optimally to each other's decisions. Types of games in game theory. Game theory has two main focuses: cooperative games, where players can form alliances; non-cooperative games, where players act independently and often compete. Most game theory models involve 5 key conditions. Each player has at least 2 choices or a sequence of choices. Think of these as moves in a game, like moving a chess piece. All possible choices lead to a clear outcome. You can win or lose. Each player gains or loses something based on the outcome. Players know the rules of the game and understand what's desirable to other players. Players are rational, meaning that when given 2 options, they will choose the one that maximizes their benefit. While players know the rules and the possible choices of their opponents, they don't know their opponent's actual decisions in advance. This means that players must make choices based on assumptions about what their opponents might do. Some games are zero-sum, meaning one player's win is another's loss. Others allow for mutual gains or losses. In these games, you can develop multiple strategies. For example, you can minimize your potential losses, a defensive strategy; make decisions based on probabilities, a calculated risk approach. If all this sounds confusing, let me show you a real-life example. The prisoner's dilemma, a classic game theory problem. If life is a game, then the first rule is to be skeptical of other people's suggestions. After all, if it's a game, someone else is competing, which means there will be competition and sabotage. A well-known example is the prisoner's dilemma. The game goes like this. 2 criminals are caught red-handed and arrested. Each has 2 choices: stay silent, cooperate; testify against the other person, defect. They are separated and each is offered a deal. If you testify against your friend, you get only 1 year in prison, while your friend gets 10 years. If both stay silent, they each get 2 years in prison. If both testify, they each get 5 years. At first glance, staying silent seems like the best option. If both do this, they'll each serve only 2 years. But then one of them starts thinking, what if I stay silent and my friend rats me out? Then I'll get 10 years while he walks free. Since neither knows what the other will do, the safest move is to testify, leading both to defect and receive 5 years in prison each. This is an example of a Nash equilibrium, a situation where no player can improve their position, given what the other player is doing. The takeaway: even though both prisoners would be better off cooperating, individual incentives push them to betray each other. This is the fundamental problem of non-cooperative games. Players can't communicate and must act in their own best interest. Other game theory concepts. 1. Coordination games. Unlike the prisoner's dilemma, some games reward cooperation. A coordination game is one where everyone benefits from working together. For example, driving on the correct side of the road. There's no incentive to break the rule. If you do, everyone loses. 2. The principal-agent problem. This occurs when one person makes decisions on behalf of another, but prioritizes their own interests. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's modern politics in a nutshell. 3. Game theory in biology. Game theory isn't just used in economics, it's helped biologists explain evolutionary behavior. For example, it explains biological altruism, why some animals risk themselves to protect their group. A bird that warns others of a predator might endanger itself, but this behavior benefits the species and might be reciprocated later. Real-life applications of game theory. Game theory applies to business, politics, and even advertising. Take Apple and Samsung. Both companies could stop advertising and save money for R&D. But if one company advertises and the other doesn't, the advertiser gains market dominance. So both keep advertising even though it's expensive, because not advertising is too risky. Another example, littering. If everyone agrees not to litter, society benefits. But if some people litter, the cost falls on the whole group, making not littering feel pointless. These same dynamics shape big decisions in society, from climate change policies to political elections. Nietzsche and the hidden game of society. Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher, argued that most people unconsciously follow the herd. They conform to social norms, moral codes, and expectations, never realizing they are playing a game they never chose to play. He warned, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." In many ways, society is a massive coordination game. There are unspoken rules, punishments for nonconformity, and rewards for obedience. But Nietzsche believed that the goal of life is not to play society's game, but to create your own. This is what he called the path of the Übermensch, the overman, the person who transcends societal expectations and lives by their own values. So what happens when you apply game theory to Nietzsche's philosophy? Let's break it down. 1. The prisoner's dilemma and the fear of standing alone. In game theory, the prisoner's dilemma is a classic example of how people make choices when they fear betrayal. Two criminals are caught and interrogated separately. They can stay silent, cooperate, and risk the other betraying them, betray the other, defect, to minimize their own punishment. Logically, both should cooperate, but out of fear, they both defect, choosing self-preservation over mutual benefit. Now apply this to real life. How often do people betray themselves just to conform? How often do they sacrifice their authenticity because they fear being rejected, criticized, or isolated? Nietzsche believed that most people unconsciously play the prisoner's dilemma of self-discovery. They think, if I express who I truly am, others might reject me. Maybe it's safer to just blend in. But just like in the prisoner's dilemma, when everyone defects, conforms, everyone loses. Society becomes a loop of inauthenticity, where no one expresses who they really are. Nietzsche's solution? Take the risk. Be the one who doesn't defect, even if it means standing alone, because only those willing to face that fear can ever truly be free. 2. Zero-sum games, the war for status. In game theory, zero-sum games are situations where one person's win is another's loss. This is the game of social hierarchy, fame, wealth, power. Every gain comes at someone else's expense. Nietzsche saw this as a trap. Most people play the zero-sum game of social status, chasing money, power, and approval, never questioning whether the game itself is worth playing. They measure success by external validation rather than internal fulfillment. But Nietzsche's overman doesn't compete for status. He creates his own value system. He stops chasing what society tells him to chase. He doesn't care if others think he's winning or losing, because he's playing a different game entirely. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Once you define your own rules, you're no longer trapped by someone else's scoreboard. 3. The Nash Equilibrium and the illusion of consensus. A Nash equilibrium is a situation where no one can improve their position without making things worse for themselves. It's a point of stability, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. Many social norms exist because they are Nash equilibriums. People conform because it seems like the safest move. But Nietzsche saw this as stagnation. He argued that real growth comes from breaking equilibrium, from taking risks, from challenging the status quo. If you follow the crowd, you remain in mediocrity, a pawn in someone else's game. The overman breaks the equilibrium, reshaping the world instead of being shaped by it. Number 4, the coordination game, the illusion of morality. In game theory, coordination games are where players benefit from making the same choices. Morality, religion, and social customs function like this. People follow shared beliefs because it makes cooperation easier. Nietzsche's critique: most people don't choose these beliefs consciously. They inherit them without questioning their origins or purpose. He famously said, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." Instead of blindly following moral codes, Nietzsche's overman creates his own morality, guided by personal strength and wisdom rather than inherited dogma. The final move: escaping the game. If life is a game, then Nietzsche's ultimate advice is to stop playing by other people's rules. Most people live according to strategies dictated by others. They seek approval, they fear judgment, they avoid risk. But Nietzsche believed that true freedom comes when you stop optimizing for social rewards and start living for your own highest values. Game theory helps us understand the hidden rules that shape our lives. Nietzsche gives us the courage to break them. So the question is, are you going to play the game society designed for you? Or are you going to become the overman and create your own? The deeper mechanics of game theory, we established that life itself is a game, an intricate web of strategic interactions, hidden incentives, and unconscious competition. But if life is a game, what are the actual mechanics behind it? Game theory isn't just a surface-level observation of competition. It is a mathematical framework that governs decision-making, strategy formation, and long-term optimization. It's the code behind the chaos, the algorithm behind human behavior. In this section, we'll go beyond basic strategic thinking and dive into the advanced mechanics of game theory, the difference between pure and mixed strategies, why uncertainty and probability shape decision-making, how different types of games dictate how we play, the psychological and evolutionary impact of strategic behavior. Once you understand these deeper layers, you won't just see life as a game, you'll see the hidden patterns controlling every decision you make. 1. Pure versus mixed strategies. Why probability shapes the game. A strategy isn't just what you do, it's also how you decide what to do. In game theory, we break strategies down into two fundamental types. First is pure strategies, the one-path approach. A pure strategy is when a player always makes the same move in a given situation. There's no randomness involved, just fixed, predictable choices. Example: imagine playing rock, paper, scissors against someone who always picks rock. If you figure this out, you can always pick paper and win. The problem with pure strategies? They make you predictable. And in a competitive game, predictability is a weakness. This is why in real life, people who follow strict linear strategies often lose to those who adapt. The world isn't static, it's a battlefield of shifting variables. And that brings us to mixed strategies, when randomness is a weapon. A mixed strategy is when a player randomizes their choices to remain unpredictable. Instead of always choosing rock, you might pick rock 50% of the time, paper 30%, and scissors 20%. Why does this matter? Because in strategic competition, unpredictability is power. In professional poker, elite players never play the same hand the same way every time. If they did, opponents would exploit their pattern. By introducing randomness, they prevent others from predicting their moves. This same logic applies everywhere. Investing. If traders always followed the same strategy, markets would adjust and neutralize them. War. Military strategists use deception tactics to keep the enemy guessing. Social dynamics. Charismatic people keep conversations unpredictable, making them engaging. In essence, a good player knows the game, but a great player never lets the game know them. Number 2. The psychology of decision-making. Why we don't always play rationally. Game theory assumes that players are rational, that they logically weigh their options and make the optimal decision. But here's the problem. Humans are rarely rational. We're emotional, biased, and impulsive. And this irrationality affects strategy in ways that traditional game theory doesn't fully capture. The prospect theory. Why we fear loss more than we desire gain. A fundamental flaw in human decision-making is loss aversion. The idea that losses hurt twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. Imagine a simple bet, a 50% chance to win $100, a 50% chance to lose $100. Mathematically, this is a fair bet, but most people will reject it because the pain of losing $100 feels stronger than the pleasure of winning $100. This is why people play it safe, even when risks are calculated. It's also why many people stay in bad jobs, bad relationships, or bad situations, because the fear of loss overpowers the potential for gain. Game theory often assumes rational optimization, but in reality, people make emotional, loss-averse choices that aren't always optimal. The role of bluffing, deception as a strategy. Imagine you're playing poker. You have a weak hand, but instead of folding, you raise aggressively. Your opponent, unsure whether you're strong or bluffing, folds. Congratulations, you just won without having the best hand. Game theory isn't just about calculating the best move, it's also about manipulating how others perceive your moves. This is where bluffing, misinformation, and deception come into play. In politics, leaders signal strength, even when their position is weak. In negotiations, people overstate their willingness to walk away to get a better deal. In social situations, confidence creates an illusion of competence, even when it's unwarranted. Strategic deception isn't just useful, it's necessary in competitive environments. 3. Zero-sum versus non-zero-sum games. Are we competing or cooperating? Not all games are win-lose battles. Some games reward cooperation just as much as competition. Zero-sum games, one wins, one loses. Zero-sum game is where one player's gain equals another's loss. Chess, if you win, your opponent loses. War, one side's victory means the other's defeat. Business competition, if Apple gains market share, Samsung loses it. Most people default to seeing life as a zero-sum game, where success means defeating others. But this is a flawed perspective because power isn't always finite. Influence grows when shared. Wealth isn't strictly limited. New industries create new opportunities. Knowledge multiplies when shared. Teaching strengthens understanding. This leads us to the more complex type of game, non-zero-sum games, the power of win-win thinking. Not all interactions require someone to lose. In non-zero-sum games, cooperation creates mutual benefits. Relationships, both partners gain when trust is built. Trade, two countries exchanging goods, both profit. Scientific collaboration, sharing discoveries accelerates innovation. However, cooperation requires trust, and this is where game dynamics become unstable. The biggest risk in cooperation? The possibility of betrayal. This is why game theory models like the iterated prisoner's dilemma show that repeated interactions build cooperation, because if betrayal leads to future retaliation, players learn to cooperate over time. In essence, short-term thinkers play zero-sum games. They try to win immediately. Long-term thinkers play non-zero-sum games. They build systems that benefit everyone. So the real question is, are you playing for today or for the future? The deeper you understand the game, the less it controls you. Power, status, and social manipulation. The game behind the game. We broke down the mechanics of game theory, how strategy, unpredictability, and decision-making shape competition and cooperation. But this only scratches the surface, because game theory doesn't just govern strategic thinking. It explains the invisible rules of power, status, and influence. The reality is, most people are playing a game they don't even realize exists. This section will uncover the hidden status games people play every day, why social hierarchies form, and how they are maintained. Manipulation tactics used in politics, business, and relationships. How power structures reinforce themselves. The moment you understand these dynamics, you won't just play the game better. You'll start seeing the hidden forces that control people without them even realizing it. Number 1. The status game, the invisible competition that shapes society. Most people think of competition in terms of money, careers, or relationships, but these are secondary prizes in a far deeper game, the status game. Status isn't about wealth or material success. It's about perceived value in the eyes of others. And in human societies, status is often more powerful than raw power itself. Why status matters more than money or power. Money can be lost. Power can be overthrown. But status, the perception of importance and influence, is often the hardest thing to take away. That's why billionaires still seek fame and recognition. Money alone isn't enough. Politicians care more about public image than personal wealth. Celebrities fight for attention, not just money, because attention is status. Status is the ultimate currency because it governs how people are treated, who they listen to, and what opportunities they receive. And the moment you realize that everyone is playing a status game, you can start playing it on your own terms. 2. The 3 types of status games. Which one are you playing? Sociologists will break status games into 3 categories. 1. Dominance games. The rule of force. Dominance is status through fear and control. It's the oldest form of status, seen in dictators, warlords, and even high school bullies. Examples: a CEO who rules through intimidation rather than respect, a politician who stays in power through fear tactics, a gang leader who maintains control through violence. 2. Virtue games, the illusion of moral superiority. In virtue games, status comes from moral posturing rather than raw power. People gain influence by signaling their righteousness and condemning others. Examples: social movements where moral purity becomes a competition, public figures who gain status by attacking others for perceived wrongdoing, internet outrage mobs that cancel people to boost their own status. Virtue games are powerful because they don't require force, they use social pressure instead. 3. Success games, the path of achievement. In success games, status is based on competence, skill, or personal achievement. Examples: entrepreneurs who build billion-dollar companies, athletes who dominate their sport, artists and musicians who redefine culture. Success games create real value, but they are also the hardest to win because they require actual skill. Which game are you playing? Most people unconsciously fall into one of these games without realizing it. Some bully their way to status, dominance. Others virtue signal their way up, virtue. The most valuable players earn status through real achievement, success. The question is, are you playing the game you actually want to play? 3. The Nash Equilibrium of social hierarchies. Why most people stay in their place. The hidden rule: stay in your lane. Every society has a hierarchy, whether it's a government, corporation, or social circle. And the most powerful rule of these hierarchies is simple: most people are expected to stay in their place. Why? Because hierarchies are stable Nash equilibriums. In a Nash equilibrium, no player can improve their position without disrupting the system. In social hierarchies, the people at the top want to stay on top. The people at the bottom are conditioned to accept their role. And any serious attempt to move up the hierarchy often results in resistance from the system itself. The crab bucket effect. How groups keep you down. There's a saying: if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, they'll pull down any crab that tries to escape. Humans do the same thing. If you try to improve your status, people around you will often mock you for trying too hard, criticize you to bring you down, sabotage you to keep their own position secure. This is why breaking free from the status game is so difficult, because it's not just external forces holding you back, but the people around you as well. Number 4. Manipulation tactics in the game of power. Every game has rules, but those who truly win the game are the ones who learn how to bend, break, or rewrite those rules. Here are 3 of the most powerful manipulation tactics used in politics, business, and everyday life. The strategic fool. The art of playing dumb. The greatest deception isn't making others think you're powerful, it's making them think you're harmless. Example: a politician pretends to be incompetent to avoid scrutiny. A CEO downplays their intelligence to manipulate investors. A competitor acts clueless while secretly outmaneuvering their opponent. The power of scarcity, controlling access to influence people, value what they can't have. This is why the most powerful figures in any game control access to themselves. Examples: celebrities limit their public appearances to maintain mystique. Business leaders refuse meetings to seem more important. Charismatic individuals delay responses to create social value. Scarcity creates demand, and demand creates power. Social proof, the illusion of consensus. Most people don't think for themselves, they look to others for guidance. This is why creating the illusion of popularity is one of the most powerful tactics in the game. Examples: politicians fabricate polls to show fake support. Influencers buy followers to appear more credible. Businesses fake demand to increase real demand. In the game of perception, whoever controls the narrative controls the game. How to escape the game and play on your own terms. Most people are trapped in the game without realizing it. They play for status, follow the hierarchy, and get manipulated by those who understand the rules. But once you see the game clearly, you can choose to stop playing the wrong status games and focus on true success. Recognize how hierarchies trap people and learn to navigate them strategically. Master manipulation tactics so you're never a victim of them. The question isn't whether you're playing the game, you already are. The real question is, are you playing it consciously, or are you just a piece on someone else's board? Transcending the game, how to rewrite the rules of reality. Game theory explains how people act within systems, but what happens when the system itself is broken? History shows that societies aren't static, they evolve, collapse, and get rebuilt. The rules of the game change over time, but only a few people ever understand how to influence that change rather than be controlled by it. This final part will explore how revolutions, paradigm shifts, and new ideologies rewrite the game, why some people remain players while others become game designers, the hidden mechanisms behind mass movements and historical turning points, the ultimate strategy for escaping the game entirely, because the greatest power isn't winning within the system, it's reshaping the system itself. 1. The grand strategy of history, how societies change the rules. Throughout history, the biggest winners haven't just played the game better, they've changed the game entirely. This is where metagame theory comes in, the study of how rules evolve over time and how new systems emerge to replace old ones. The hidden cycles of power societies operate in cycles, and each cycle follows a predictable pattern. Creation, a new system or ideology emerges, disrupting the old order. Stabilization, the system establishes itself and becomes dominant. Stagnation, the system becomes rigid, suppressing innovation or dissent. Collapse or revolution, a new force overthrows the system, restarting the cycle. This cycle happens in politics, economies, religions, and social structures. Example 1. The fall of Rome and the rise of feudalism. Rome started as a small republic, then expanded into an empire. Over time, corruption, bureaucracy, and internal decay weakened it. Eventually, barbarian invasions and economic decline collapsed the system. Feudalism replaced Rome's centralized rule with localized power structures. The key lesson? No system lasts forever. The rules you play by today may be irrelevant tomorrow. Example 2. The Industrial Revolution and the end of aristocracy. For centuries, land ownership was the foundation of power. Then industrialization shifted wealth from land to innovation, creating a new ruling class, entrepreneurs, bankers, and industrialists. The aristocracy lost influence, and capitalism became the dominant game. Why most people never see the shift coming? Most people think the current rules are permanent, but in reality, the printing press shattered the church's monopoly on knowledge. The internet disrupted traditional media and centralized control. AI and automation are already rewriting economic structures. The real players of the game aren't just reacting to these shifts. They see them coming and position themselves accordingly. Number 2, who writes the rules? The real game designers of society. Every system is designed by someone. The question is, who gets to decide the rules? There are 2 types of people in this world: players, those who follow the existing rules trying to succeed within them; game designers, those who create the rules and force others to play by them. The architects of control. How elites shape reality history shows that societies aren't random. They are designed by small groups of people who set the rules. Examples: the Founding Fathers wrote the U.S. Constitution, creating a new political system. Karl Marx developed communist ideology, reshaping global power structures. Tech billionaires today shape how people interact with the internet and AI. These people weren't playing the existing game, they were rewriting the rulebook. The power of narratives, how beliefs shape the game. The most powerful way to change the game isn't through force, it's through ideas. If you control the dominant narrative, you don't need to force people to follow the rules. They'll enforce them on themselves. Examples of narrative control: religions create moral codes that people follow voluntarily. Political ideologies shape entire civilizations without direct coercion. Marketing and branding make people desire products they don't need. The most effective rulers in history weren't warriors. They were storytellers, philosophers, and strategists who rewrote the game's meaning. Number 3. The final strategy: how to escape the game. Now that you see the game for what it is, the final question is, How do you escape it? There are three possible approaches. 1. The master strategist, becoming a high-level player. Some choose to stay within the system but master its rules so well that they effectively control the game. Examples: Warren Buffett played the financial game better than anyone else. Elon Musk disrupted multiple industries by outthinking competitors. Julius Caesar climbed the Roman political hierarchy and took absolute power. This path requires deep understanding, patience, and mastery of strategic thinking. 2. The rule rewriter, creating a new game. Others don't just play the game, they create new ones. Examples: Steve Jobs didn't compete in existing markets. He created new categories: iPhone, iPad. Henry Ford didn't play the existing car industry. He invented mass production. Religious and ideological leaders throughout history have reshaped entire civilizations. This approach is harder but offers the highest rewards. 3. The outsider, leaving the game entirely. Some realize that all games are artificial constructs and choose to opt out. Examples: philosophers who abandon worldly concerns for deeper understanding, monks who retreat from materialism to pursue inner peace, individuals who reject mainstream success in favor of personal meaning. This is the path of Nietzsche's overman, someone who creates their own values rather than following pre-existing ones. Final question: are you a player or a designer? Now that you understand game theory at its deepest level, the choice is yours. Will you stay a player, optimizing your moves within a system you didn't design? Will you become a strategist, mastering the existing rules and bending them in your favor? Or will you become a designer, rewriting the rules entirely and forcing the world to play by your terms? The game isn't going anywhere. The question is, will you control it or will it control you? We've now uncovered the mechanics of game theory, from strategic unpredictability to deception, from loss aversion to cooperation. What does this mean for you? It means that you can use mixed strategies to avoid being predictable. You can understand why people make irrational choices and use that knowledge. You can recognize when you're trapped in zero-sum thinking and shift to a non-zero-sum mindset.